Okay, you're all set.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This is the July 22nd, 2024 meeting of Barnstable's Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. I'm Hector Gunther. I'm the new chair of the committee. I wanted everybody to know that this meeting is being recorded and you can watch it on Town Television Channel 1072 after the meeting is concluded. I have to ask, in accordance with Massachusetts law, whether anyone is taping this meeting. If so, to make himself or herself known. And hearing none, we'll proceed. Chris, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, I will. Hector.
I'm here.
Chuck.
Here.
Lillian.
Here.
Jim.
Present.
Tom.
Here.
Jeremy.
Here.
And I'm here. So everyone's here.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So tonight we have the good fortune to welcome a new member, Jeremy Shea. Jeremy, I thought it'd be a good way to start if you could just introduce yourself and tell us any financial experience that you have and why you wanted to be on CFAC.
Yeah, well, greetings. I am Jeremy Shea. I'm actually a teacher at Barnstable High School. I moved into town last year, took the Intro to Barnstable Town Government class, which was a most glorious 12 weeks. And I came from Sandwich. I grew up in Sandwich, and I was on Sandwich Finance Committee for 3 years. So after taking the class, I wanted to put my efforts towards the realm which I knew best. And I'm excited to be here. So certainly, that's maybe a little background. I have many tales, many stories that we could get into later. But
what, if I can ask, what do you teach at the high school?
I teach mostly American history and a global affairs elective.
And how many years have you been a teacher and secondarily at Barnstable?
Ooh, so this will be 10 years at Barnstable,
Wow.
2 years in 7th grade and 8 years. And then I've taught in Central America. I taught up in Lawrence, taught in Sandwich. So I think collectively we're maybe at 16 years of teaching now.
Yeah. Well, you have a wonderful background for the committee. We are a committee of lay people. Some of us have some finance experience, but what we all bring to this undertaking is common sense and, a deep interest in our community and making our community better and making it run better. So we're very happy to have you here, Jeremy. As I said in the email on Friday, we are down 2 members. Our full complement is 9 and we only have 7. So each of us should put on his or her thinking cap. And if you have other people, contacts, colleagues, acquaintances who you think might be good for this committee, please encourage them to reach out to me or to Mark Milna about joining CFAC. So that would be great. Next on the agenda is we're going to, as we said earlier, we're going to review the June 24th minutes at the next meeting in August. Next topic on the agenda is discuss and comment on the very initial draft of the 2025 fiscal 2025 financial overview report. I circulated that document on Friday. And then yesterday I circulated separately one additional piece, which is the public education piece. And I propose that we just go through this page by page. And if people have any comments, editorial changes, please speak up. And Mark Milne has put it up on the screen, and Mark has agreed to make notations of any changes and edits that people propose. The timing for this is we're well ahead of schedule. This is due to be released, Jeremy, in September. This is a document we publish every year. We usually have a print run of 300 or 400 copies, and then each of us delivers it to various parts of town, libraries, post offices, real estate offices, banks, for knowledgeable citizens who want to read up on town financial affairs. We've also, Jeremy, just so you know, we've tried to increase the readership by promoting it on the town website. We've talked about possibly circulating a PDF of this 12-page document to everybody on the town of Barnstable weekly email list, but we have not done that thus far. But anyway, we're looking to get a good document together this year and hopefully to increase the readership. So with that introduction, why don't we just start with the first page? And I actually, in the document where the font is in red, that means that someone, me or one of you, has made changes. And in the paragraph below the picture, I just updated the dates. Mark, I think I love the photograph this year. You probably have access to a whole series of photographs. So can we come up with a sample photograph for the new issue of this document?
Yep, we'll pull up a new photo for this year.
Okay, great. And then in the community profile, the top half of the box is fine. We'll need to update the population and the other data if updated data Cape Cod can be accessed. So where data need to be updated, Mark and his team are going to be responsible for that. And then it goes without saying, and I also said this in my cover email, all the links that are in this document are going to be updated to point to more current versions of the material that's referenced. So,
Hector,
yep.
just a minor thing on the paragraph in red.
Yep.
In the fourth line, you just use FY without defining it. I think you just need to put back up in the first line, a parenthetical that says after fiscal year that says FY, just so we define it.
Okay. So in the first line, write FY and then parenthesis, mark fiscal year, close parenthesis, 2025. And that will do it, Chuck?
Yeah, or you can just after fiscal year, just put a parenthetical that says FY. If we're going to keep this, naming construct, FY space and then the year.
Okay.
Right. I agree.
Okay.
The part in red is essentially what we used this last year.
Yeah.
Except for the number of pages on the budget.
Yeah. And by the way, as we go through this, if people have ideas for changing even some of the boilerplate like this, please speak up. Jeremy, I, as an aside, did the Sandwich Committee publish a yearly document like this?
Yeah, it went out for a town meeting, so I will say, like, already it's more straightforward here, so I appreciate this document immensely. So compliments to the creators.
Okay. All right.
Hector, can I ask one more? Sorry.
Please.
I said the thing. So just a question for the group. After in the whatever color that is, gold brown box, the town of Barnstable, do we need in Southeast Massachusetts if we're also telling people it's on Cape Cod? I'm just trying to cut words out of the thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. We could take that out.
Yeah, I agree too. Should we consider adding a reference to Barnstable as being the economic center of Cape Cod? What do people think?
I think we should
Is
just
that
keep,
somewhere else in
I
the
think we
document?
should just keep the basic information
Okay,
without, just population, that sort of thing, what we have in their little brown box.
right,
Yeah,
right. But I was suggesting that we could read something, the town of Barnstable is Cape Cod's largest community in land area and population, and is also the economic center of Cape Cod. But okay, we'll hold off on that.
Well, it does say right there, it's the commercial and transportation hub, so that kind of touches.
There you go.
on that, I
You're
think.
right.
Yeah.
Yep, good. Thank you for that, Chris. All right. Any other comments, Chuck? Anybody on this first page?
now, all you have to do is add the new data.
Right, right.
Okay,
All right. So page 2, government structure. This is Chuck McKenzie's handiwork. So Chuck, you want to take us through it?
Yeah, all I did was, it's a pretty significant chopping of the prior version.
Mhm.
I don't like one of the chops I made, so I'm going to question my own wording here. But as I compared the old one to the new one, I think it makes the points. It doesn't have some of the history. We don't have some of the, earlier different names for the towns. It's just kind of dragnet, just the facts. The only thing that I didn't like when I reread it was the third line in the third paragraph. Currently, the town oversees 32 funds available for development. I'm not sure I know what, and preservations of its standards. I'm not sure what of its standards adds to this. I would have taken it out if I had read my own work more closely. So currently the town oversees 30 funds available for development and preservation with a market value of 40 million.
yeah, I agree with you.
Again, I'm just trying to cut. I couldn't watch the video because I couldn't find it on the site, so I just went for cutting without losing substance.
Oh, the video of our prior meeting.
Right,
Yeah.
it wasn't posted when I looked, so that's my
So-
only.
Yeah,
Comment.
I think it's a very good explanation. Because that's succinct and clear.
So the market value, 48.2 million, do you mean billion there? Oh, the market value of the 33 trust funds?
Yeah,
I think that's million.
Yeah. Okay.
I wish it were billion.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what that million referred to. And then Mark, we can update that for the June 30th, 2024 trust fund numbers, right?
Yes, we will.
Okay. Okay, other comments? I think it's fine. I think less is more, for sure.
yeah, I think you did a good job of this, Chuck.
So in that
It's
fourth paragraph,
concise, it's clear, and it gives everybody the facts.
in the fourth paragraph, you can wait and make the changes later, but so you should change 76.7 million in FY 23
Yeah,
to 82.8 million in FY 84 and 86.9 million in FY 25.
right. So as we said, Jim, Mark is going to go over this and update all the data. All right.
Good job.
Government's good job. All right.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, the next two pages.
wait a
Sorry, go
minute.
ahead.
Wait a minute, Hector, a ratio of 46.2%. And then at the end of the chart, it says as of June 30th, 2023. Can we squeeze that back up? You see that?
I'm sorry, where,
The last line of the fourth paragraph.
yeah,
So
okay.
that, yeah, you need to move.
There you
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
on my version of my screen, it is above the chart, yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
yeah,
One thing,
Okay.
just in that little quick history bit, it's fairly vague of the town was bought. I think stipulating it was bought from the Wampanoag tribe would be clearer.
So in the second sentence,
Yeah.
villages were bought.
From the Wampanoag tribe.
So historically, that's accurate, all of the villages are made up of land formerly owned by Wampanoag, Jeremy?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Anybody know how to spell Wampanoag?
Wampanoag.
That sounds right. Okay. Good. Well, as I say, we're going to go over this document today, but as you have other ideas or changes or additions, please feel free to circulate them by email to me with a copy to everybody else on the committee, and we can make updates in time to circulate an updated draft for the next meeting in August. All right. If no more questions on page 2, page 3 and 4. As I said in my email, Jackie, before she asked for a leave of absence, and it was determined that her term was up, and there's no provision in the town charter governing committees and commissions for leaves of absence. I made the determination that she should just not seek reappointment until she's ready to come back. But before she left, she wrote me and said she wanted to leave. She thought last year's general revenue and expenditures pages 3 and 4 of this document were good, subject to updating. So I throw it out to the committee. What do you think? I think I think the construction of the section is good. The financial flows, revenues, and expenses, the way it's laid out is good. But if someone has, a strong view about this section and wants to tackle it and update it or move things around, I'm open.
Yeah, so Hector, for what it's worth, you don't need to see me, but I like the flow, and I think Neil and whomever else worked on this did a great job of putting it in. The only thing that I just didn't care for last year is the rectangular boxes, where some of the boxes are so small, at least on what I'm reading, there's no verbiage that goes with them.
Right.
And I unfortunately don't have I'd have to think about a alternative to this. I like that the relative size of the boxes tells us where things go. I don't like that some of the boxes are just sitting there.
Why don't you use a pie chart?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, if we can do that with a pie chart and it doesn't have the same challenge, then I think that would be awesome. I also don't know, my recollection last year was there was a space constraint issue.
Yeah.
That pie charts take up more room than rectangles do.
Gotcha.
Mark, your advice on this?
To address Chuck's chart issue, a pie chart would be more appropriate. That way you could see all of the categories.
Right.
But it
Would
will
you-
be a space issue. So perhaps we can compromise one of these, some of these other, maybe this general fund chart budget, this bar chart here.
Wh- Which one? I'm
so
sorry. Which one?
Actually, Mark, I think that's a great idea because the stuff that's in the existing pie chart is just a regurgitation of what's below in the three boxes. It's not adding anything new, is it?
No, because this is all general fund revenue sources. So
Yeah, it's the stuff that's in the headers below.
this is just total general fund revenue, this bar chart where this should the categories of the general fund revenue. That's the only difference here.
So Mark, your suggestion is to eliminate the bar chart?
Yeah, eliminate this chart here,
Yeah,
highlighted,
okay,
and then change this chart to a pie chart.
right. Okay, that's good. And then what about the three charts on the next page? Education, municipal ops, fixed costs. What would you do
Yeah.
with those?
And
Could you turn
Hector,
that-
just to
could
be
you
clear,
Sorry,
that pie chart that exists right now on the page on the screen
yeah,
is redundant because all those numbers are in the rectangles below.
okay. So if we get rid of that existing pie chart, then Mark, do you think we'd have enough room to create 3 more pie charts out of those 3 boxes to the lower left of page 4?
It's good. They're going to be tough to read.
Yeah, I agree.
And Mark or Hector, if you want to take a shot at pie charts, no matter how hideous it might look, I'd be happy to volunteer, Hector, to take a shot at redoing the wording around the pie charts. I think the pie charts are arguably more important than some of the verbiage.
Yeah,
And maybe if the pie charts are clear, we can cut down some of the words and fit it all on one page.
okay. So I'm not very good with charts and graphs. Is that something, Mark, that you could undertake, or Chuck, could you create pie charts?
I am not a pie chart guy. Sorry, dude.
Okay.
I can do the verbiage, but I'm a disaster.
So Mark, are these created in Microsoft? What's the program?
You can do them in Word or Excel.
Okay,
So we can embed an Excel pie chart into this document.
Okay.
I'll have our staff work on putting in the pie charts, converting these over to pie
Okay.
charts.
So just to be,
I have a suggestion here. If Chuck is going to abbreviate some of the description, why don't we go back to the original pie chart of the expenditures that we just got rid of in the upper right-hand corner? Because the original pie chart gave us the relative expenditures of education, fixed costs, and municipal operations. So if you put that there, and if Chuck abbreviates all of this description, I think when you get to the left side with the different categories, it's very clear.
okay.
All right, yeah,
So-
and I think Lillian's raising a good point too. That there really is any reason I need to wait for Mark to do pie charts to take a shot at the verbiage. So I'll just take a shot at the verbiage.
Okay. Okay. So on both pages, you'll seek to trim some of the words so we can fit in 3
Correct.
pie charts, and we're agreeing to delete the pie chart on the top of page 4 on the right side. And Lillian, I might have not quite understood your suggestion, but just to sum up, we're going to delete that pie chart on the top of page 4. And we're going to delete the bar chart.
No, you're going to put the pie chart back, because Chuck is going to edit all of the descriptions.
So the pie chart that shows fixed costs, education, and muni ops, you're going to leave
Right.
that.
We're
Okay,
gonna leave that.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's play around with it. I think it'll be a function of how much of the words we can cut. But I have great faith in Chuck's ability to cut the language here.
The pressure's on, Chuck.
Yeah.
Everybody else took one step backwards.
Oh, okay. Chris, Jim, Jeremy, other suggestions?
I think back on page 3, that bar graph is a nice visual that shows the general fund by year increasing. I think for the public, it's a nice, I would agree that general fund on the left, though, is confusing, and the colored rectangles that have no labels would definitely be a good pie chart.
I'm sorry, I thought we were going to eliminate the bar chart, the one that you just complimented, Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, I get the space restraint, but I think
Right.
it is like a good thing to tip our hat towards, and visually someone that's going to be looking through that doesn't want to read paragraphs, it is
Okay.
visually nice, but
Okay.
certainly if it needs to be sacrificed for space, I
Okay.
understand.
Okay, so Chuck, we're going to give you discretion to play around with these 2 pages and come back to us with some suggestions. And Mark, you and your team are gonna come up with some new pie charts for the bottom left of the second page of these I don't know what you would call these boxes. It's not a bar chart, but okay.
All right, yep, I'm on it.
All right, and then enterprise funds. Chuck, was this yours as well?
It was. This one I had a lot more trouble cutting because it was pretty succinct as it was. So there's minor cutting in here, but it only takes up 1 page anyway. So, I'm not, it wasn't a hatchet job.
So Lillian, you're the enterprise fund maven. Do you have any comments on this page?
No, actually, I did that one. And I agree that it's fairly succinct. And I agree with Chuck. It's self-explanatory. So we don't need to change anything other than the figures.
The data, yeah.
Yeah.
When I read the last line in the paragraph at the top of the page, I sort of said to myself, do we need a sentence of explanation as to why the HYCC and the marina are subsidized?
So,
Just a
so in other
thought.
words, at the end of the sentence, you could almost have a comment. No, the 2 funds are subsidized because.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Due to, however you want to phrase it, but we just make the bold statement they're both subsidized after talking about how municipalities manage operations as separate funds, and we have these 2 that are not completely separate, and seems to
Because
me
they don't generate enough revenue on
Right.
their own.
right, and we know that, but the reader won't know
No,
it.
I
So
think
maybe,
you can just add that short phrase and that should cover it.
yeah. So Chuck, maybe you could add a sentence of explanation or a phrase of explanation as to why
Yeah,
they're
that should
subsidized.
do it.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Okay, good. We're moving right along here.
On
Next.
that little chart, I don't know how much explanations typically go in. Just the airport enterprise fund sees a significant drop, and I don't know if there's area to explain some of these. I think 1.8% drop for all the enterprises is intriguing for a casual reader. So I don't know if there's a conversation or explanation for some of those changes.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Mark, these funds, they're driven by user fees, and the fees vary from year to year. I don't know that there's much else you could say about a 1.8% drop. The airport, the change in the airport, and of course we don't know what the fiscal 24 to 25, that might change the percentages. But Mark, with the change in the airport, that's a reflection of lower fuel sales, or what caused that 11.7% drop in the airport fund?
I have to go back and look, Hector, but yeah, these are it's usually attributable to activity levels, and in particular the airports usually associated with the cost and of acquiring jet fuel for resale. Because that can fluctuate by, a couple of dollars a gallon throughout the year. And it's typically why you would see a major fluctuation in the airport enterprise fund is the acquisition cost of that jet fuel that they resell.
Yeah. So here's my suggestion. I think Jeremy raises a good point. Maybe we wait to see what the updated data look like, and then we make a decision whether we want to add a sentence or two explaining, some of the larger percentage changes.
What you could do if we have a big change in the enterprise fund for the airport is you could have another asterisk and put it at the bottom
Yep.
of the total budgets, and that would explain why there's such a big change.
Yeah, I think they,
Without,
different ways
without adding to text. Yeah.
Yeah, there are different ways to explain it, but I think a footnote is a good one. Okay, so Mark, can you just write a bracketed note that we're going to look at the updated data and decide whether we want to add a footnote of explanation? All right, other comments, Jim, Chris?
No.
Nope, it's clear.
Okay. All right.
Let's
Now
go to
we're
fire.
Now we're on to fire districts and capital improvement plan. And I would just, before turning it over to Chris, oh no, I withdraw that. I actually thought that they were in reverse order compared to last year, but they do follow the order from last year. So
Right.
Chris, go ahead. You want to take us through the fire district section?
Yeah, I didn't really make a lot of significant changes. I did change the text a little bit just to try to maximize the space. And there should be a pie chart on there as well. I actually was thinking of just eliminating that map and putting the pie chart up where the map is again, just to save on space. I don't know what everyone thinks of that, but
yeah. So that's a fair point. So you did eliminate the map. I left it in when I transposed your words into the document. I happen to think the map is helpful. It just shows where these various districts are. To me, that's helpful for the reader who wants to just wants to understand.
Yeah, I think that's fine, as long as it all fits on one page, that's, what it is, but.
Yeah, well, the only thing I couldn't do is figure out how to get this, what do you call this thing on the top of page 7, this.
The QR code.
I couldn't figure out how to move that to the right of the pie chart on page 6, but Mark can probably do it. Mark, how do you, oh, wow. Marvelous. That was easy. So, comments, questions on this page? Lillian, point of information, did we have this? I know that Neil had an interest in referencing these separate taxing districts other than the town itself. Did we used to have a fire districts page in 4 or 5 years ago in this document?
We've always had a fire district page.
Okay.
What it used to be called was fire and water district page.
Right.
We used to have little pie charts and bar charts and all of this other stuff.
Right.
But I think this is fine. I have I don't know if we're doing any editing, but
Sure.
I would just suggest this, that there are 5 separate fire districts in the, oh no, I like the way you start. which provide both fire protection and emergency medical services. Because
So-
if it's fire, you know it's going to be fire, but if you say which provides both,
Yeah,
yeah.
so insert the word both.
Insert the word both, if that's okay with you, Chris?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Yeah,
yeah.
I like the rest of it. I think it's clean.
Yeah, Hector, I did some editing on this one, but because it's on one page, I'll just, it's all minor nits. The only thing is it looks like, and I'll send it to you, but there's like 3 different fonts used here. So as long as we fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
agree
tried
there.
to, that's a good point. When I was pasting words from the Word documents that everybody sent, I did try to synchronize, I think, to get to the font, which is Century Gothic paren body. I think that's our standard font for this, but I may not have gotten all the fonts. So thank you for that.
Other than that, I think it's very well done.
I have one question, and this is perhaps for Lillian. So the sewage, the sewers that are currently in operation in Hyannis, are those managed by the Hyannis Fire District?
I don't think so. I think those are managed by the town.
Right,
DPW.
So the sewer belongs to the town.
right. So the Hyannis Fire District,
As far as I
Right.
know,
yeah,
Mark can tell
yeah,
us.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
yeah.
The town operates a sewage treatment plant.
Right.
Collection system, treatment, as well as disposal.
I guess where I'm headed with the question is, the last sentence, we talk about Hyannis water supplied by the town through the Water Supply Enterprise Fund. And then we address where the water in West Barnstable comes from, but we don't talk about water in Com, Catuit, or Barnstable. Should we have
I think
Another-
the point Chris is trying to make is that the Hyannis has split water.
split water?
Yes,
Meaning,
the Hyannis Fire District
yeah,
has split rate.
I was talking about
What are you
the
talking?
tax rate.
Yeah,
The point with that was just that the water in Hyannis is supplied through the town by the enterprise fund,
right.
rather than a Hyannis fire district or water district, and
Yeah.
water supply in West Barnstable is through private wells rather than a West Barnstable water district.
I think you make that distinction.
right. But then should we explain about Com and Catuit?
About what?
Should we explain, should we have a sentence of explanation for, the water in Com and the water in Catuit and the water in Barnstable Fire District?
Yeah, so West Barnstable, it's mostly by wells. Does the
Right.
water district there supply water as well, Mark, or is it all
No.
wells?
So,
They're private wells, West
It's
Barnstable.
all
Yeah.
private. Yeah.
all I'm saying, Chris, is we've talked about Hyannis and West Barnstable, but we don't talk about the water from Catuit, Com, or the Barnstable Fire District, the top right
Yeah.
quadrant
Yeah, I
of that
can
map.
reword that so it says Com, Catuit, and Barnstable water districts supply water. I'll reword that. Yeah.
All right, it just seems to me that might be another sentence of explanation, and I think we have the room in the document to do
Yeah,
it.
we do.
So,
Yeah, that will
Okay.
clear. Good.
okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
Any other comments on this section? Jeremy, any thoughts?
I think that previous statement you made about where's the water coming from those others was my main question. So I think that would clarify it. I like the map. So
Yeah.
I'm pro map.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And the data will be, of course, updated. And then the page 7, Mark, that had only the URL, you'll get rid of that page, right? So the new page 7 will be capital improvement plan.
Right.
I'll take care of that. We'll
Okay.
fix all the formatting.
Okay. All right. So capital improvement plan was also Chris. You want to talk about this for us?
Yeah, I mean, again, I made fairly minor edits to the language. You know, I rewrote the whole thing, but only some minor edits from last year.
Yeah.
All the data should be updated for the current FY25, but it was pretty straightforward the way it was set up. So.
Hector, Chris, whoever the heck I'm supposed to.
Yeah, Chris.
Just 2 minor edits. The 3rd paragraph for FY25 capital project submissions total 26.92. Just to cut 2 words out, I would just put a comma after million and say, get rid of this represents. I don't know why we have that. Has to be a separate sentence.
Right.
And then one just clarity thing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th paragraph, a comparison of. My suggested rewording is comparing last year's 5-year plan to the current plan, comma. I just found the wording a little clunky.
That's fine.
It's fine with me.
Repeat that, Chuck.
Yeah, I just had comparing last year's 5-year plan to the current plan.
Yeah.
Comma, the town projects.
Yeah, that's good.
And then comma. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I did. This was great.
And get rid of all that through iteration. There you go.
Yep, I think it's great.
Yep.
Chris, any other comments, observations?
No, I don't have any. Like I said, all the data should be updated on this one and the fire page, so should be
Okay.
good to go.
Okay, good.
Okay, good job.
All right, we're on to public education. So for this one, since I didn't paste Jim's words into this document, we can switch, Mark, you can switch to the Word document that I circulated yesterday from Jim. Funding overview. So my one comment about this is 2 pages versus the 1 page that we had last year. And there are probably ways to compress the data, the number of students in the Barnstable schools.
Right.
Maybe we just, we can mimic what we did last year. And then the historical spending. Jim, was it your intention to set up the data the way in charts the way it was?
I was just gonna, this is just a precursor to a chart, so
okay.
I hadn't put it in a format yet, so
Okay.
the intent is to make these 2 just a chart, simple chart, and include data. I see I didn't get the 24 in there. That should be in there. Chris and I exchanged a few emails today, so I've got everything updated and finalized. It's just a matter of getting it into the content that, or the format that you were using on the report. I
Yeah.
went and just, like we did with it last year, just developed a new section, and these are my thoughts.
Yeah.
But if you want it to look like last year's, I'm happy to do it that way.
No. I was just questioning how you're going to get through 2 pages down to 1, but now I understand.
Yeah, I
One of the
think,
things, one, somebody started to say, I think, was that you, Jim?
no, it was me.
No.
I was gonna
Ah.
say that I was gonna compliment Jim on his narrative.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's
I like-
thorough, I think it's clear, and I think all of the information that anyone wants to know, and then we can condense all of that, as you indicated, into these charts.
yeah. One of
And
the
that,
things that,
that should take, that we should be able to fit that into 1 page.
I think so too. Jim, I like the fact that you have a new section called financial challenges. One of the, in my, when I draft the looking ahead section, one of the topics I was just going to list was chapter 78 and the fact that it's variable and so forth. So I like the fact that you put in the discussion of continued dependence on state chapter 78 and the risks.
As we listen to the superintendent, I mean, we're well aware of the capital improvement plan, which is calling for 90 million over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, that's one way, but also inside the school structure, there's significant changes in classroom learning experiences, where we were made aware of the ESSER program and requiring to take out of our safety net almost $3 million of savings from to fund ESSER teachers this year. So those are structural concerns that the school has going forward as the school population changes. So we need to be sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. Go ahead.
This might be a non sequitur, so apologies up front, but we've talked in the past about bringing up topics that we'd like to spend more time on. And for me, you opened this meeting saying that some of us are kind of neophytes in some of the stuff we do. And for me, education would be one of them. But kind of from a private sector view, when you look at kind of supply and demand, and you look at enrollment numbers, and then you see what's happened in the budget, it kind of makes you scratch your head. And I think when the superintendent's been on and has explained the change in the makeup of the students, the change in categories, the financial burdens that those changes in categories put on the schools, it's all understandable. But contextually, if this document is for the public to read, I'd still be scratching my head after I read it about why the other departments seem to have a different year-over-year financial profile than the school department. And that may not be for this conversation, it may not be for this document, but I'm just kind of putting out there that I'd be interested in having that discussion within our group at some appropriate time, because I'm still fuzzy on, as a long-time private sector guy, some of these numbers just make they challenge my sense of kind of logic. So, and I'll get off my soapbox now. I just wanted to put it out there. Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I think those are valid feelings to have, Chuck. And if you are open-minded about responses, there are mandated programs and infrastructure and structural costs that come with managing a school district. that cause, year over year increases. Well, in any department, name me a department in public our government that doesn't increase. I mean, it's just the way it is. So I think I'm sensitive to, after listening to the superintendent the last couple of times in her presentation to the town council, I'm just sensitive to the change in student demographics and the economic plight of our parents. And we have over 53% of them are economically disadvantaged. So,
Yeah.
I think though it is, I guess since it is such a large chunk of money, having one page maybe is a disservice to that. If we're equally, I'd say the education is not equal. It's a massive amount of money. I mean, everything from like how many buildings do the schools have is something that I think would be interesting to put in there. How many staff are in the school district? So I think education is the piece that the public has the most questions about because it's so much money. So giving it space, and I think a one-page limit is maybe constraining to have that narrative in there. So I don't know if that one page is arbitrary or what, but there's a lot of information that the public wants when it comes to education. And it seems like this could be a good area to add some of that to help clarify some of those questions.
I
agree.
It's a good point, Jeremy. And I think that one other thing that I was going to bring up in the next section, but it might be apropos here, and I'll keep it short. Sometimes you read a book by two authors, and sometimes you can tell when they switch. And the next section is like written by an entirely different style. But I wonder, because I don't think it's bad, I just think it's different. But I wonder if a more conversational style like the CWMP style would serve us well in the school section, because if it's a big budget item and if it's an emotional topic for taxpayers, maybe we need to be more disclosive, conversational. Let's pretend we're sitting around having a beer, not regurgitating cold hard facts. And again, that may not be for here, it may not be for now, but I agree that it seems like we could spend more space on something that's so profoundly impactful on the budget, and do so in a way that might resonate more with the 300 people who pick up the things that we print and the other people who read them online.
If I may, I think we kind of wrestled with this last year too, and our thought was to make this document shorter rather than longer.
Yep.
And invite people to look deeper if they choose to at some of our other documents, the operating budget report, the CIP report that itself. This is kind of just an overview more generally. So I don't know, just talking about more details, I agree, it's good to have more details, but for this document specifically, I think we had agreed last year to keep it on the shorter side and just provide the resources for the reader to go deeper if they choose to. So just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's the reason that we added the QR code on it, so that if you wanted to go deeper, you could.
But I agree with Chris 1,000%. But I think the contextual question that I would ask then is, let's then stick to Chris's correct memory that we wanted to keep this to whatever number of pages it is, 10 or 12 pages. I don't know what it is.
12 pages.
And then my question would be, but are we allocating those pages correctly?
Right.
So let's take as a given that we're not going to increase the number. If I look backwards to all the other sections, should CWNP and education dominate this thing and incent us to relook at how we're spending space in the prior sections? And I would just argue having that discussion wouldn't be a horrible idea.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
it's a fair point. Yeah. Yep.
I agree with everything that's been said. I'm looking ahead to to the next section, which is Tom Keene's section on property taxes. And that was 1 page last year, and I assume we can compress, Tom, your comments into 1 page this year. But I agree with what was said before, that, you know, and I especially appreciate Jeremy's comment, which is, you know, there's a big chunk of money. And it's something that a lot of readers would have a great interest in. So I'm not sure what we do with this. Maybe the thing to do is to finish the discussion of these sections, and then for each of us sort of step back and look at the entire document and say, how would, if we wanted to reconfigure some of the sections and expand some of the others, how would we do that?
And I think that's a good idea, Hector. And let me clarify that when I made the comment on the different writing style and I said the next section,
Right.
I was mistaken. It's the CWMP section that to me reads like a completely different animal.
Right.
Just so I'm clear on that. But
Yeah.
I do think it would be worthwhile, maybe once we get through this tonight, since we have some time,
Right.
just say on a weighted impact basis, are we allocating the right amount of space to the right topics?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me just
Okay.
pick up that before we move on to the property tax.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the general fund section, we have the revenue and the expenditures, and we've got a pie chart of the expenditures. So you have education, you have fixed costs, you have municipal operations. And picking up on that, perhaps after we do the general fund expenditures, we can pick up on the education, because that becomes a major component of all of the money that we spend. So
move the education section
move the
to page
education
5.
section. Right.
Yep.
Because the reader has just looked at all the little pie chart and says, wow, that's a lot of money. So if we move education to page 5,
Yeah.
that would help.
Yeah, I agree.
And I agree with what Chuck says. You know, the schools is such a major component, and it's really quite complicated, as we all have found out, and none of us really, except for Jim, knows a lot about school finance. So yeah, I would love for us to have a discussion about that
Yeah. Jeremy, and your
after
role
we
as
get this through.
Yeah. And that's a good point. But I'm tempted to ask Jeremy, you know, you're a teacher. In your role as teacher, you're not really exposed to sort of the overall financial profile of the system that you work in, right?
I'd say when I was on Sandwich Finance Committee, I
Yeah.
did a lot of grilling because
Yeah.
yeah, so I've definitely gotten into it, and I teach my students about it because certainly their appreciation of town commitment to their education is minimal. So I spend time with all my classes just kind of breaking down the town's budget and looking at expenses for education, and I think it's very important for me to do, because especially when they're about to graduate. And even just that idea of like how many people in our town did graduate from the school. Like there's probably members on this board that are graduates as well. So thinking about like, what are we doing? What is the result of that? So that narrative, which I agree with the wastewater, like there's a great narrative there. Like we understand the purpose, and this one just jumps into numbers. So thinking like, how do we tell a story that's like, okay, we get that.
Yeah. So
Jeremy, do you have the copies of the fiscal 25 recommended operating budget and CIP?
Not
the
sure.
2 reports,
they're
Lillian,
fairly large documents, but it would be helpful for you to go through it to get a better feel for what all these expenditures are.
They're available on the town's website, Jeremy, but if you want hard copies, we do have extra hard copies in the finance office.
Okay.
I would recommend going with the electronic copies on the town's website. Because they're pretty thick. Make a good doorstop.
Yeah, the 6-inch binder.
Okay. Well, I like Lillian's idea of moving up the education section, so we'll do that, and then we're all going to sort of take a step back.
For next year.
Well, for next year and for the next meeting to sort of say, okay, if we were going to reconfigure any of this, how would we do it?
Yeah.
So, okay. That sounds good. Now, back to prosaic matter of something that all of us pay, property taxes. Tom Keane, you've recast this section as well. You want to take us through it?
Sure. To be blunt, I read the old section and didn't understand it. It had a lot of jargon and was confusing. So I tried to write a piece explaining property taxes to, say, the typical reader, and really explaining how we're taxed, what goes on with residential exemption, what goes on with Proposition 2.5. So it's really just an effort on my part to have a fairly clear, somewhat jargon-free explanation of the property tax. Obviously, the numbers highlighted are the old numbers and would be changed.
Right. Okay, well, I like the more plain spoken version. I think it improves it for sure.
It's longer.
Well, it makes it a little bit longer. One of the things you do call out is Prop 2.5, and that's an important guardrail that the town administrators have to watch out for when they construct budgets, because municipalities are limited in what they can raise taxes for.
It's a huge guardrail.
Yeah.
It is
I think
the defining thing in property tax.
I think it was a very well constructed description. I would start though, in your first sentence. I would just say property taxes, Barnstable property taxes continue to be.
Yep, that's fine by me.
Yeah. And just take away fiscal 25.
Yeah.
Property taxes are always the largest source of revenue in our town.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Fine by me.
So
Property taxes will continue to be.
Right. Continue.
Okay.
Can continue to be.
Yeah.
And I like it's very chatty and very friendly. Under the residential exemption, isn't it 25% this year?
It may be. I actually put that down.
Yeah, I think
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was changed by the town council at its first meeting.
Right. So
yeah.
And again, we'll
confirm all the numbers. Yeah.
Right.
But I like it. Is this going to fit into one page? Probably not.
No.
So we're going to need to edit.
So my there's an old saying, an old writer's saying that the first draft is easy and the final draft is hard, because it's easy to write a lot of words. It's hard to write few.
Yeah.
But what I was trying to do was get this out in a way that was clear.
Yeah.
I can write to word count. So if we need to go down, I can go down.
Okay. So this is a process question. So Mark, once you make the changes in this document, if you send it back to me, I'll take a look at it, and then maybe I'll go out to each of you individually and say, Tom Keane, you need to cut X amount of space to fit it in one
Well-
page, so, but I mean, let's leave all the words here for now. And the bar chart, which I think is very helpful because it shows where Barnstable stacks up versus the other towns. But you know, as a next step, Tom, I may come back to you and ask you to cut it to one page.
No problem.
I think it's well done. My suggestion, if you are going to edit, is to take the part at the bottom of the first page that starts since inflation, and then edit all that out, including fire district. And that'll,
Okay.
yeah, that part.
All right, we'll let Tom sort
But
through
Yeah.
that.
But look
So-
at it and see
Right,
how that narrative
Yeah,
flows.
I think so, and I don't mean to put words in Mark's mouths here, but the really big thing about Proposition 2.5 is that it makes it extremely hard to manage in a circumstance where inflation is over 2.5%, which has historically and certainly now is the case. And I think that's almost the most important point here. And you know, if I were to go back and start editing it, there's more examples I might cut out. But I think this is a hugely important point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's good. And I'll revert to you, Tom,
Yeah.
when I get the edited edited version of the entire document back from
Okay.
Mark. Okay. Any other questions, Jim?
So I just want
Chris?
to be clear, are we had a little conversation about page or whatever it is. Are we bringing everything to one page? So I know what my direction.
No.
That's what you were just saying.
We're trying to,
Well,
we have
so
said traditionally,
Jim,
Yes, yes.
what I'm simply working from is last year, property taxes took up one page of the 12-page document. And it looks to me like here, what Tom has prepared is going to be slightly more than one page. And so he's going to need to cut it back to fit into one page in the actual printed document. That's all I'm saying.
And the only
For
reason
this-
I bring it up is that
Yeah.
we had the same situation last year. I think with education was a page and it's running a little bit longer, but so.
Yeah. But
I'll be prepared to reduce it if it's required.
Yeah. Well, one of the, Jeremy brought up the issue of, education is a big chunk, so maybe we should devote a little bit more lineage to education, but we'll tackle that once we see what the version 2 looks like that Mark's going to send to me. Okay. All right. CWMP, Lillian.
yes. I condensed,
So take us through it.
well, I hope you've had a chance to read it.
Yep.
Yep. But essentially, it is a conversation with the residents and the questions that they ask. And so this section, rather than describing the background and the why we needed it, deals with the nuts and bolts. We have it. We know we have it. When am I going to be sewered? How much is it going to cost me? And what phases are we in? So essentially what I did was to condense last year's and basically deal with what we're dealing with now, what are the projects and what are the costs and what is it going to cost me? And
Right.
so I talk a little bit, and I think both property taxes and CWMP are of great interest to the resident because it actually costs them money. And
Right.
so I think it's okay for us to talk to them in these terms because the financial impact on the owner is paramount in their minds. They want to know, how much is it going to cost? How much will it cost me to hook up? And and all of that. So I address that. And I don't deal with the other aspects that we had before. What I did do was on the revenue sources, I used a footnote, and therefore it didn't take up as much space.
Yep.
So that's basically it.
Yep.
The only thing that I based on Mark's presentation to town council on Thursday, he had an optimistic outlook. He had the hypothesis was that it was going to increase this much, and we were going to be able to get general obligations at this much. But if it didn't happen, then we would fall back to the debt exclusion. So I'll look to Mark to see whether we need to alter the part about costs, because I talk about the need for us to pay attention to that.
Right. Okay, well, I like what you've done here. I mean, similar to Tom's discussion of property taxes, you've made it more, you've brought the topic down to earth a little bit and focus, and you're speaking to the people who have to engage with the town to hook up. So I like that. I think it's a salutary change. So I'm supportive of what you've done. Anybody else have comments, Chuck?
No, I agree with you, Hector. I said before, I actually like this. I think it's conversational and relatable. And the only minor nit I had is under the requirement paragraph. Maybe this is a question for Mark. The last part of the last sentence, it is projected to take 30 years to complete. I would have said it'd take at least 30 years to complete. I don't know what the latest is. I mean, the budget changes like crazy. I gotta believe the time frame is also not locked in either. So,
well, that's why I use the word projected, because I didn't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah,
it's our best guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe that takes care of it.
Okay.
I agree with the general comment, though, and it sort of drives home maybe a larger point that I think Lillian was making, and that is that this particular document is different than the other document we were working on. This is really intended to speak to the average person, the average taxpayer, and tell them about the stuff that's really influencing them or affecting them. Clearly, the sewer hookups do, as do property taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end, I mentioned that they can get more information, and they can get the homeowner sewer connection guide. They can go to DPW and just click it and on the website, and it will download. And that's a terrific guide. Kelly Colopy did a wonderful job in putting this together.
Yeah.
Hector, I have to step away for a second. I'll be right back. Keep going.
Okay. All right. So again, good job, and we'll take another look at it, and I'll read it closely in the next version, Lillian, and maybe I'll have some nits and nats for you. But I like your approach.
Thank you. I want to just mention to you, Hector, because you had at the very beginning of our putting this together, that you wanted to have a looking ahead section.
That's right.
We used to have that many years ago when we had our this annual report. We had a looking ahead section, and they were bullet points.
Yep.
What do you keep your nut? And it was just succinct. So you didn't have to have a whole bunch of narrative.
Right.
This is what we need to look at.
Yep.
Whether it's police or water or whatever it is. But if you're still thinking about it, I think that we can go ahead and do that, and it doesn't add to our narratives.
Yeah.
But it's right there, And we normally had put it on the back page
Right.
because as you flip from the front to the back, you had looking ahead, keeping an eye on the future, and then you had the bullet points.
Yeah. And that's, so
And
you're
that's
raising a
it.
good,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, we would have space for that.
Yeah. So you're raising a good point. So I started to write the sections, but you know, without the contributions from each of you, and very importantly, I wanted to hear Mark's July 18th presentation to town council and look at his spreadsheet. I decided to hold off on writing that, but that's, Lillian, you've sort of encapsulated my approach. It's going to be on the last page, and it'll just be some bullet
Yeah.
points, challenges, and so forth. And I'll write that in the next week or so, and that will be in the next version that we'll discuss at the August meeting.
Great.
And I think talking about the last page, I think we can cut some of this stuff back. The GFOA awards, I mean, we can reference some of these, but we can trim these 4 sections so that we can have a little bit of space for looking ahead, challenges, opportunities, whatever I write it as. But unless anybody is wholly wedded to this last page, what I would agree to do is when I write my looking ahead section, I may edit this last page so that the looking ahead comments will fit in here.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I think editing's fine, Hector. But there are some, hopefully you'll keep the punchlines though.
The punchline.
Yeah, I mean, for all the sections, there's a reason the sections are in there. And
yeah, yep.
If I've just read the prior 13 pages and I'm thinking the tax money I'm paying and how you're spending it, I'd like to know that there's accountability, transparency, responsibility, prudence, all that stuff. So however you do it, as long as the points are in there, great.
Yeah. Okay.
We could also shrink the fonts on this last page.
Okay. All right. So, that's, I think, we got this done in an hour and 20 minutes. Mark has a couple of other items to walk us through. So I would propose, unless anyone has any parting shots at the financial overview, that we move to the next item on the agenda, which is Mark is going to take us through his financial overview report that he presented to the town council, and then he's going to spend a couple of minutes on his model and ask us to review it, and each of us to review and possibly to challenge his funding model. So, Mark, over to you. Hello, Lillian. I only see you.
I'm here.
On the screen, gallery view. Okay, sorry.
Mark is muted.
Yeah.
Coming. Hang on a second.
Okay. And oh, by the way, Gareth, I realize you're still with us. You should raise your hand if you have comments or questions as we have these meetings.
I certainly will.
Everybody seeing this okay?
Yes.
Yep.
So we gave this presentation to the council last Thursday night. Just to begin with, the date, we have appropriated about $275 million in capital project cost for implementing the CWMP. That concludes $145 million for sewer expansion projects, $129 million in water pollution control facility projects, and a small amount for non-traditional projects. In the FY 25 to FY 29 capital improvement plan document, we have DPW's projected costs for the next 5 years with a list of projects here. You'll find these in that CIP document. I took the numbers that they had included in that document and inflated them all by 5% per year to recognize some factor for inflation. In that 5-year CIP, I think the total cost was about 430 million, but as you can see here, we're up to over 464 million.
Mark, if I can ask a question about the 5%. So did you inflate the fiscal 2025 numbers, or did you start the inflation with fiscal 2026?
2026.
Okay,
Because fiscal year 25 numbers were just appropriated by the town council.
right, okay.
The 26 through 29 have all been inflated by 5% per year. The numbers you see highlighted in blue represent appropriations we anticipate funding with cash, and the numbers highlighted in green are projects we intend financing through bond issuances. And 3 of these projects, the ones with the asterisks next to them, nitrogen removal headworks, improvements, Route 28 sewer expansion, and the Finney's Lane neighborhoods sewer expansion, all those projects were listed on the Department of Environmental Protection's 2024 intended use plan, meaning that we can finance those 3 projects through the Mass Clean Water Trust, taking advantage of their lower borrowing costs. So these are the total. So this is where we're starting from in trying to figure out how are we going to pay for all this in the next 5 years. These are the projects Public Works and plans on implementing. They also had in their submission a project for effluent alternatives. That's not on my schedule here because they don't know what that is yet. But it's probably going to have a significant cost associated with it, and whether or not it falls in this 5-year time period, we don't know yet. So I'm not including anything for that because I have no.
So that's when you say they had effluent alternatives plan. So you're referring to DPW?
DPW, yes.
Okay, all right.
They just had a category listed as effluent disposal alternatives with no dollar amount, no specific year really as to when that would be implemented. So I can't include it. I can't include something that I don't know anything about. I have no number for, and I have no timing on it. So I'm working with this list of projects right here. So to finance those construction costs, I mentioned we have 2 ways to finance those. One is through the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust. In order to finance a project through the Mass Clean Water Trust, it has to be listed on DEP's intended use plan. And if it does become listed, if it does get listed on DEP's intended use plan, the project then automatically becomes eligible for a Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidy. It also, since Barnstable is considered a Tier 1 disadvantaged community, we have that designation where we are providing an additional 3.3% principal subsidy on the project if we finance it through the Mass Clean Water Trust. We are also classified as a housing choice community. This qualifies us for a 1.5% interest rate borrowing. The trust's borrowing rate is normally 2%, but housing choice communities can borrow from the trust at 1.5% for up to 20 years. If you amortize your loan longer than 20 years, they will charge you a slightly higher interest rate. And for example, the project we just financed through the trust most recently was the Strawberry Hill Road sewer expansion project. We amortized that for 30 years, and our borrowing rate through the trust was 1.7%. So they added 20 basis points to our borrowing costs.
Mark, can I ask a question? So if you add the protection fund principal subsidy plus the 3.3%, what's the total subsidy that Barnstable is eligible for?
So the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund changed the way they are subsidizing these projects. They are no longer providing the subsidy up front against your principal amount that you're borrowing. They started off funding us at 25% principal subsidy. So we would have had a 28.3% subsidy in total, for example.
Mhm.
They're doing now is they're taking 25% of that project cost and they're amortizing that subsidy over a 20-year period or 30-year period if you're going to borrow for 30 years. So we're going to get a 25% subsidy over a period of time instead of directly applied up against the principal at the upfront at the borrowing.
Right.
Different methodology, the way they're distributing the funds. And what that has allowed the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund to do is to maintain a 25% subsidy for the next several years. Without changing that funding strategy, they were going to have to cut everybody's principal subsidies from 25% down to 12%. That's what they were estimating. So this is a big change. This is a big change for the positive for us because we're going to be able to maintain a 25% subsidy. However, we're going to get it over an extended period of time as opposed to right up front. So we factor that into the financing model.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Also, there's a $50 million borrowing cap on an annual basis through the Mass Clean Water Trust. Okay, so you can't borrow more than 50 million. There is a waiver, however, so that's subject to a waiver. DEP could, if they have additional funding available, could finance more than $50 million in any one given year of your projects listed on their intended use plan. Sometimes what happens is if you look at their intended use plans, there's about 100 or so different projects that they end up listing that they intend on financing. Some of those projects sometimes don't get off the ground timely enough, and they pull that funding back, and it gives them additional funding to reallocate to other projects that may need more funds.
So the cap is 50 million per municipality.
Per municipality, and that's subject to a waiver. So, for example, as I was just explaining, if we find ourselves in a situation where we spent $60 million in a fiscal year, we needed to borrow 60 million from them. We sat down and talked with trust officials, and they were optimistic that they would be able to help us out in a situation like that. But we don't know if we can actually spend $50 million a year yet. So we haven't been tested to that level. That's major project costs, major significant construction costs that you're talking about within a contracted 12-month period. So, but if we get there, we ever do find ourselves up against that ceiling, trust officials have assured us that they will work with us to provide us the additional financing that we may need. If we don't get the project listed on the intended use plan, the only other alternative we have is the general obligation bond market. So what we would do is we would package any CWMP project that didn't get listed on the intended use plan, package it up with all of our other capital projects, school facilities, municipal facilities, whatever gets approved on an annual basis, and we put it out to the annual bid. We issue, as you know, a general obligation bond every single year. And we would just package these sewer projects up with everything else, put it out to bid, and which we just did in June. This past June, we just issued, I think about a $20 million general obligation bond for which we got a 3.7% interest rate, which was a good interest rate considering today's borrowing market.
What was it last year?
Oh, it was 2.5%, I think. Because as you know, borrowing costs have gone up significantly over the past few years. And
but there is the prospect that the 3.7% will drop.
Yes.
Next time we get a market.
Yes. Yeah. Because all indications are that interest rate cuts are forthcoming, which will impact, have impacts across the entire financial market, including the municipal bond market eventually, which we would anticipate that our borrowing costs will improve over the foreseeable future. I don't think interest rates can go in any other direction other than down based on all the conversation we're hearing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So then our subsequent operating budgets include these annual loan payments, and we have to factor those annual loan payments into those operating budgets going forward. So how do we pay all those loans back? We've created several funding sources to pay those loans back, including dedicating a portion of our rooms tax on traditional lodging. We took in almost $1.1 million in fiscal year 24. the amount that's dedicated to this program from traditional lodging. We also have dedicated 100% of the local meals tax that we collect to this funding this program, and that was over $2.1 million in fiscal year 24. We also have dedicated 100% of the tax on vacation rentals to this program. And in fiscal year 24, that was over $2.4 million. We have begun committing a portion of our general fund property taxes on an annual basis to this specific capital program. Fiscal year 25, that contribution is up to 4.25 million. We've made a commitment to get that up to 5.75 million by fiscal year 27. So 2 more years of $750,000 of additional property taxes dedicated to this program will get us there.
So that increase in the general fund contribution, that was debated and voted on by town council.
Yes, it's subject to town council appropriation on an annual basis.
Right.
It's part of our operating budget. It includes an appropriation for funding our capital program and transferring money into our capital trust fund, and that's where that money is in the budget. Then sewer assessments is we've created a sewer ordinance, as you know. The town council has adopted a $10,000 maximum sewer assessment. We'll begin collecting our first sewer assessments in fiscal year 25 as the Strawberry Hill Road project is now live. Property butters who have the ability to connect to that line have been notified, and estimated sewer assessments have been issued. Final sewer assessments are forthcoming, so we'll begin collecting revenue from that source. And as new sewer customers come on board, we'll start collecting more sewer utility rate revenue as they start using the sewer system. So that'll be a new revenue source for funding this program. We also have investment earnings on cash deposits that we invest to get a return, of course, to try to maximize resources for this program while protecting the integrity of our principal and keeping those resources liquid. And of course, the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidies are now being distributed as I described earlier. There's one new potential source if it materializes, and that is the recently negotiated side agreement with Park City Wind for receiving a $16 million payment up front at the time that project receives its financial close. I mean, once they get all the financing for that project, if they're successful in financing that project and that project goes forward, they have to make a upfront $16 million payment to the town of Barnstable. The town council could decide to dedicate that revenue source to this particular program. It's considered general fund revenue. And so without any town council action, it'll just fall to the general fund and close out the general fund free cash. Otherwise, the town council could act to dedicate it for a specific purpose. And so that's a potential revenue source.
So, Mark, can I just ask what the definition of financial close is? Is that when so there'll be construction financing while they build the project, and then there will be permanent financing. Is that what financial close refers to, is the permanent financing?
The side agreement is available on the town's website, Hector. If you want to take a look at it, it's under the town council area of the website. And
okay.
Find them there.
Mark, is there any impact to a resident on the increase in meals tax? I mean, is that considered? I mean, I'm assuming it wouldn't be hotels, but do you factor in the effect on residents for an increase in meals tax, or is that even a consideration? I know it's a small number, but
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, Jim. Because the meals tax revenue that we get comes from all prepared meals sold in the town of Barnstable, whether it's a resident or a visitor.
right.
Yeah, so and we don't know.
Gotcha. Okay, that's really what
Who's
I'm
paying it. So that's hard to tell.
Gotcha.
So,
all right.
That granular level of who pays it, but yeah, it's 75 cents on a $100 bill. That's what the local meals tax comes out to be.
Gotcha.
So here are the major assumptions that we've built into our financing model that I've shared with you, that Excel workbook. This is the key. These are the key drivers that that impact that financial model, all of these assumptions right here. And in the Excel workbook that I sent you, each one of these has a little drop-down list that you can choose a number from, and you can manipulate the financial performance of this program by adjusting these assumptions. And I'll show you in a few minutes once we jump into the Excel file how that works. But these are the key assumptions. Right now, we're using a 2.5% rate of return on our excess cash deposits. And we've built some conservatism into these based on our historical performance. Traditional lodging tax would increase 1.25% a year, meals tax 4.5, vacation rental 3.5. We will continue beyond fiscal year 27, providing additional general fund contribution, but only $100,000 a year up until fiscal year 32. That we need that to make the financial model work using all these other assumptions. We're assuming a 5% annual increase in salaries for staff that is working on implementing this program. Those are all mostly Department of Public Works employees. Health insurance increases of 7.5%. Operating expense increases of 2%. We're going to continue with that general obligation bond rate of 3.7%. However, I think it will be better than that in the future. Mass Clean Water Trust borrowings will be 1.7%, as the last one we just did was 1.7% for 30 years. And again, design and construction cost inflation, we have a factor in here of 5%. And that's above inflation right now, but again, trying to be conservative in the projection. A utility rate increase of 5%, dedicating half of that utility rate increase revenue to this program, the other half being dedicated to the existing collection, treatment, and disposal costs associated with sewer flow that our sewer fund operations has to manage. And then we're assuming right now, we have no historical information on this yet, but we're assuming right now that as far as the sewer assessments go, we're going to collect those over a 15-year period. Property owners have the ability to amortize that sewer assessment of $10,000 up to 30 years if they want to. I think what we'll end up seeing is some property owners will pay the entire amount up front if they have the financial means. Other property owners will pay it off over a 5-year period, 10, 15, 20, and some 30. It'll really depend on their individual financial situation. So we're using an average of 15 years. We're splitting it in half and assuming that on average, we're going to collect the sewer assessment revenue over a 15-year period. Yeah, because what happens also is upon a property transfer and ownership, any lien, like a sewer assessment that might be outstanding against that property, gets paid off at that closing upon transfer of ownership. And we're sticking with the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidy at 25%, which will be distributed to us over up to a 30-year period if we're amortizing these projects over 30 years. They have said that they can fund our projects at that level for the foreseeable future based on the revenue that they're taking in and this new payment allocation method. And then finally, if we decide to contribute that Park City Wind contribution of $16 million to this program, that's built into this model as well. And that can be manipulated anywhere from $0 to $16 million. So those are the assumptions, the major assumptions that drive the financial model, and we'll look at those in a minute.
Okay, Mark, can I just ask a question? The other revenue source from the wind power projects is personal property taxes on the installed infrastructure. That goes to a different bucket. That doesn't come into this.
It's general fund revenue. Yes, that's general fund revenue. And what you could characterize that as, heck, there was a portion of that is this $100,000 for the increase in the annual general fund contribution. You can say, okay, they're going to generate $500,000 in annual property taxes. Let's take a 100,000 of that for the next few years and dedicate it to this program.
Okay.
Yeah, that's property tax revenue goes to the general fund. These are the major changes in the assumptions since February 1st, which was the last time we were before the town council to present to them an update on financing this program. We were using a 12% Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidy. At that time, we've bumped it up to 25% based on the action that the trust board has taken, the governing board has taken at the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. We've decreased our assumption on borrowings from the Mass Clean Water Trust from 1.9 to 1.7% based on what they just provided us for a 30-year financing. So they said it would be anywhere from 20 to 40 basis points. We went with 40 basis points originally, but it looks like it's going to be more like 20 basis points. So we're using the lower interest rate borrowing to the trust. We were using a higher general obligation bond borrowing rate of 4%. And now we're backing that off down to 3.7%. We think it'll go further. It'll get better for us, but we're going to stick with the 3.7, which is what we just issued our last general obligation bond for. We've increased our meals and rooms tax growth rates from 1.25% to 1.5 to 4.5%, and that's based on historical information as to what we've been collecting. Even the 1.5 to 4.5% is still lower than what historical collection rates have been. So we didn't increase them all the way up to what this history has shown us, but so we kept a little bit of conservatism built in there, but we did increase the three of them.
So Mark, the 1.5 to 4.5, does the 1.5 pertain to meals taxes and the 4.5% growth rate refer to rooms tax growth rates?
Right here, meals tax 4.5%, vacation rentals 3.5%. We're keeping traditional lodging tax to 1.25. Okay, so that's what I mean by 1.25 to 4.5.
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
We had all three of these at 1.25% last time.
Okay.
We basically increased meals and vacation rentals. And then we're going to assume more projects are going to get financed through the Mass Clean Water Trust because these projects all relate to removing nitrogen. And those are the projects that score the highest with the DEP when they're evaluating their intended use plan funding schedules. So we weren't assuming that all of our projects would get financed. Most of our projects would get financed through the Mass Clean Water Trust. I think we had about a 50-50 allocation, but we're going with a more aggressive assumption that most of them, because of the nature of them, and as we saw with the 2024 intended use plan that just came out, how our projects all got listed on the IUP and they were very highly ranked. I think all three of those projects were in the top 10 projects as far as ranking goes. And so we think we'll get more financing through the Mass Clean Water Trust, and trust officials have said that they will work with us if we exceed that $50 million cap on an annual basis to provide us additional funding. And then again, finally, the Park City Wind payment was directed towards funding this program. As you'll see when I show you, it could be anywhere from 0 to 16 million. If we were not to receive that or not dedicated to this program, we could still make the model work within reason. The objective of the model is to make sure that this blue line stays above the orange line at all times, meaning that available resources that we have at the close of any fiscal year exceed what the following year's commitments are, because we have to have those resources in our treasury in order to appropriate the following year's budget. And so at the end of any fiscal year, we have to make sure that we have enough resources that equal or exceed what the next year's budget is projected to be. And those assumptions that I just showed you, this is what the chart looks like. And you can see the blue line always stays above the orange line. But as you play around with those assumptions, these lines move. And I'll show you how that works. Here's the outstanding debt balance as we start issuing more and more bonds, either through the Mass Clean Water Trust or GOBs. You can see represented by the blue bar here that our outstanding principal balance on bonds exceed 400 million by fiscal year 34 and 35, and then they start going back down as we start paying those bonds off. Now, these are only bonds associated with the 25 through 29 capital improvement program. Okay, it's 460 odd million dollars. Most of it's going to be borrowed. That's why our debt's going to go up like this. And the orange line represents what the annual principal and interest payments will be. And you can see how the budget, those principal and interest payments accelerate over the next several years as we issue these bonds over a multiple year period. We're not going to issue all $460 million of borrowings in a 5-year period. It's probably going to take us about 10 years to actually issue all of those bonds. That's why you see our principal and interest payments continue to increase right up through fiscal year 36, and then they start going down.
So Mark, when you say bonds, you're including the Clean Water Trust borrowings in that. So and those aren't technically bonds, right? Those are loans, right?
They're loans from the trust because
but they're not evidenced by
issuing the bonds, and then they're turning around and loaning us that money.
Right.
But it counts as outstanding debt against our debt limitations.
Right.
And our debt limitation right now, based upon our 2024 proposed equalized valuation from the Department of Revenue, is $1.3 billion. So we could technically have outstanding right now up to $1.3 billion in outstanding principal. But we're far less below. We're far below that. Even with this program for the next 5 years, we'll still be far below.
Okay, thank you.
Then if any of these assumptions, if a lot of things go bad, if these assumptions don't pan out, we still have a potential additional resources that I've listed here. You've seen these before. These were part of my last presentation. There is the proposed Municipal Empowerment Act that's still outstanding. The legislature is still debating that. That would provide communities across the Commonwealth the ability to increase their local meals tax, local rooms tax, implement a surcharge and motor vehicle excise tax. These would all require a local acceptance being the town council, not a ballot initiative townwide, but the town council could vote to implement those if the state legislature passes this act. It's still being debated, hasn't been passed, but these potentially they could exist in the future. They'll probably take action on this by sometime within fiscal year 25. We also still have outstanding hanging out there, which is already law in Massachusetts, is the ability for a community to create what's called a Water Infrastructure Investment Fund. It works similar to the Community Preservation Act, whereby approved on a ballot initiative by voters, you would assess an additional 3% surcharge on the property tax bill. And that money would be dedicated to a water infrastructure investment fund, and you could use those revenues to pay your principal and interest payments on any loans that you take out. And then, of course, as we've talked in the past, another option would be to put a debt exclusion override ballot question out there to the community to see if they would fund any principal and interest payments on any debt that we issued for specific projects and add that to their tax bills every year. And then, of course, there's always the option of reducing services to the community. It could be across departments within a specific department. And you could redirect operating budget dollars basically to your capital program and have it, commit more operating dollars basically to principal and interest payments. Or a combination of all of these. So these are the tools we could fall back on if our assumptions were not to pan out, and the economy really went into the tank.
So Mark, to reduce services and separately to redirect funding towards loan amortization, those would be town council votes.
Yes.
The town council would have to authorize both of those.
We received that directive from the town council, and what we would do is we would work with all the department heads and we bring forward an operating budget that has cuts included in it, subject to the town council's annual appropriation, annual operating budget. Yep.
Okay.
You have to approve it. Finally, So to recap, if all these assumptions hold true, all the projects listed in the 2025 to 2029 capital improvement program can be provided with the existing resources and what we project for the growth in those existing resources. We would not need a debt exclusion to finance any of those projects listed on the 25 to 29 capital improvement plan. And again, if those assumptions didn't pan out, we do have these additional options available to us to consider. And then my next step recommended to the town council was to provide you all with the financial model that we prepared and have you take a look at that. And I think they would like to have you report back to them on that financial model and whether or not the assumptions are reasonable and whether or not this is a realistic funding plan for the next 5 years CIP. So that's what I suggested to them. I think they seem very amenable to that idea, and I think I don't mean to put you guys on the spot. I think you've shown interest in this over the past few years, and honestly, I could use your expertise and critique of the model so that we make sure we get this right. So that is presentation that I gave to the council, and then we can jump into the model here.
Okay. While you do that, on the recap and next step page, this presumes that all the projects listed on the capital plan for fiscal 25 to 29 can be funded with existing resources. But as we know, there's a lot of variability in these capital plans from year over year. So the next time we look at a capital plan, a 5-year plan, the numbers could go up more, could they not?
Certainly. That's why I built in a 5% inflation factor.
Right.
I assume when DPW takes their numbers for next year, what they reported for project cost estimates for fiscal year 26 through 29 are probably going to be different than and hopefully they're closer to the inflated numbers that I used in my projection, but not significantly higher, hopefully lower. Plus, they're going to be adding another year, right? Fiscal year 30. They have a brand new year that I'm going to have to start planning for next year when they submit their next CIP. So, but I'm only talking about 25 through 29 here. I'm not counting 30 yet. That's another whole year that we'll have to factor into our plan. That can come. That's why we want to look at this in 5-year increments and update it every year because we're always having a new year. So.
Okay, but my point is that that they have a certain assumption. If I go back to fiscal 26 in the 5-year plan, total CWMP spending $50 million. When they introduce their next 5-year plan, fiscal 26 could go up to 100 million, say, way above your 5, because it's not only affected by inflation, but it's affected by reallocating projects, rescheduling projects.
I have no ability to project if they do something like that, right?
Yeah, right. But past,
I got to work with what I have. I got to work with what
I understand. All I'm saying is, and we can talk about this when we drill into the model, but past this prologue, these they move their projects around from one year to the next. Fiscal 2027 is 125 million round numbers. That number could go up in the next 5-year plan. So I agree with you. I mean, you don't have a crystal ball, and you have to work with what you have. But I'm simply saying that the change, the variability is not just going to be a function of inflation, but it will be a function of what DPW decides to list as projects in a given year.
They could accelerate projects. They could push projects off too.
Yeah.
I spoke to Griffin the other day about the let me bring that presentation back up and show you. There's a project on here that I'm not sure was going to be ready by the fiscal year that they say it's going to be ready. But again, I'm not managing the implementation of the projects.
Right,
See the projects in fiscal year 27 for nitrogen
Yeah.
removal and headworks
Right.
improvements.
right,
$70 million in fiscal year 27. I think when they submit their projects next year, you're going to see that project pushed out to fiscal year 29.
yeah,
I just don't see how they could get that project up and running that quickly when they have 109 million
Right.
they haven't even signed a contract for yet.
right.
So
And there's a lot of, go ahead.
yeah, those are the variables that are so hard from a financing perspective, because you don't have any control over the planning of the implementation of the projects.
Right,
It's all in their realm and the engineers.
right. Okay, good. Thank you.
So with the model here, just quickly, and you guys all have this, hopefully you've had a chance to just play around with the assumptions, but let me just demonstrate how it works. And let's see here. I got a lot of screens open, so bear with me. Okay, can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the dashboard tab. As you see down here, it's called dashboard. And here's where all the assumptions are. So you can just click on any one of these boxes, click on the arrow and select an interest rate that you think any of these will change. So let's say instead of 2.5% for return on investment, we only get 1%. All these numbers change and you see we have a deficit out in fiscal year 47, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And our blue line falls below our orange line here.
Right,
And so that means we only get one average,
Right.
average of 1% return every year on investment income. The model's not going to work, and we got to find, hopefully something else is going to improve. So if that's the case, then maybe we got to increase this $100,000 a year to 150. And if we do that, we still have a deficit. So maybe we have to go up to 200,000. And if we do that, we're okay again. And the
Right.
blue line actually touches the orange line, but we're okay because the
Yeah.
available resources meet or exceed subsequent years committed.
Mark,
you can-
could I just ask you to leave the assumptions the way they were, but zero out the New England Wind 1 contribution and see what happens?
Sure. So if we zero that out, we end up with a deficit starting in fiscal year 42.
Uh-huh,
So one of the options would be to go to the general fund contribution here, and we can say, well, okay, let's increase this by 250,000 a year.
okay,
And that solves the problem.
okay,
We could
Right.
maybe even drop it to $200,000 a year and extend it beyond fiscal year 32 and say, let's keep doing it till fiscal year 34. And we're
Right.
positive.
right,
By fiscal year 34, our total general fund contribution on an annual basis is $6,950,000. So you can play around with this and figure
Okay.
out whatever you feel would be an appropriate assumption for any one of these categories. You can play with the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidy, average number of years that sewer assessments are collected, utility rate revenue, project costs, construction inflation factors. And then you just got to play with the revenue sources to figure out, okay, if that happens, what needs to happen on the revenue side in order to make this equation positive balance.
okay. This is excellent. I look forward to playing around with this a little bit. Maybe at our next meeting, I could ask members of the committee to come armed with some comments about the model and the assumptions, recognizing that this only applies to the current 5-year plan, but I would ask that people play around with this and come armed with some comments, skeptical questions, whatever. I think that would be helpful. I think that's what Mark is looking for here. Is,
I would just, Hector, all I would say is I did go through the model, and
right.
And I'm very aware of the fact that models like this are incredibly dependent upon the assumptions made.
Yep, yep.
But I actually think that the assumptions made here are very reasonable. And I think the plan B, C, D here are also pretty credible. At least from my look at this point, the model works. The assumptions seem reasonable. I'm a big fan of it, Mark.
Yeah.
And it certainly is better news than what I thought 6 months ago we were hearing.
Right.
Well, that's
I
right.
mean,
Well,
the biggest positive contributors to this are
Yeah.
King Mountains Water Protection Fund
Right.
stepping
Yeah.
up and restoring a 25% subsidy, and the Mass Clean Water Trust saying that they'll work with us if our expenditures exceed $50 million a year. And the fact that we'll probably score very high and our projects will get listed on the IUPs because of the nature of them, which was demonstrated by what we submitted and what got included in their 2024 IUP.
Mhm.
We were
I
less
think-
optimistic in the past.
I think it looks good.
Yeah. Well,
Can I
I,
ask you,
Tom,
Zara,
Mark, can you
is-
wait until August to have us sign off on it? Is that timing okay with you?
Oh, for this?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, certainly. I mean,
Okay.
there's no expectation for you to come back soon. I mean, if you want to take a few months to digest this and talk about it at committee meetings going forward, we can spend some time in this. We don't have to, they're not expecting us to immediately come back.
yeah, yeah, I think that's my, Tom, that's my concept, is that we all look at this model. It sounds like you've already drilled into it a little bit, but I think what would serve Mark is if we came back with some questions about, I agree with you. It's conservative from what I know of Mark. He's like a good finance guy. He's oriented towards the conservative end of the spectrum, but we might be able to challenge, one or more of us might be able to challenge some of these assumptions. So I would assume that I'd like to have a little bit of discussion about this model at the next meeting in August, but it would seem to me that any presentation or comments to town council, that could be, after Labor Day or October or something like that. There's no particular time pressure, Mark, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be fine if
Yeah.
we came to maybe a September, October meeting.
Yeah. But Tom, I guess my point is, Mark has built this model, and we won't be making a contribution unless we push back on one or more of the assumptions.
I don't I agree, but
Yeah.
But
Okay.
And if you have any suggestions to improve it too,
Yeah.
those are welcomed, because I'm not the strongest person in Excel skills as far as Excel go, but
You're a lot stronger than I am.
yeah, I mean, I struggle with some of the formulas in these things, and they take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but any, structural changes that you think could improve it,
Yeah.
of course. But the key is, as Tom indicated, are the assumptions, and
Yeah.
whether or not, they're valid. They can be backed up, and they've got some degree of conservatism built into them, because you got to be somewhat prepared for some, maybe not worst case scenario, but you have to hedge a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for this, Mark.
You're welcome.
All right. So I think we're slouching towards the finish line. Next item on the agenda, is there any correspondence from committee members?
Yes, I had something I wanted to ask of the committee, and which is a way for us to recognize as a committee all the hard work that Lillian Wu has done over the years, as a member and as our chair. And just, I don't know what the right approach is, but I just wanted to throw it out to the idea out to our committee, if that was something we'd like to support, and we can move on for details from there. But certainly, I don't mean to put Lillian on the spot, but I just wanted to be able to, as a committee, to thank her for what she's done for the town and for CFAC over the at least 12 years that I am aware of, I think.
Well, I, for one, I think it's a good idea, and one suggestion might be, Jim, that we could convene in person at someone's house, maybe after the summer, maybe in September, and just have a small get together. We could include spouses, significant others, and we're not gonna, we don't have to spill the beans on what we're gonna do to embarrass Lillian, but we could talk about that on the side.
Okay. Well, I would be more than happy to volunteer to do that. But anyways, I just wanted to make sure that committee members were aware of what we were talking about. And
Okay.
that's-
Does other people have comments or thoughts here?
Great idea.
Okay.
all right.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay.
So we can think of something to do to honor Lillian for her service for sure.
Well, I just want to say that I'm very touched by by your sentiments. Serving on CFAC all these years has been a privilege of mine, and I have really enjoyed giving back to the community for whatever minor talents that I might have. But and it's been grand working with members of the committee. Thank you, Jim.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, and Lillian, my premise for a celebration like this is that it's not goodbye, that you're going to stay on the committee for some period of time, but we just want to honor you for all of your contributions over the many years.
Well, thank you, Hector. I mean, there comes a time when all of us need to figure out when we're going to leave.
Mhm.
I don't want to be coming here while I'm gumming my food. So
Right.
at some point, I'm
All right.
gonna rotate off.
All right. Well, you
Thank
can
you.
make that decision, but I hope that certainly isn't a premise for this little party that we're going to plan for you.
Thank you.
Nothing
Thank
in the
you.
immediate future. All right, great. Any other correspondence from committee members? How about any communications from staff, Gareth or Mark?
I'm good, Hector.
All right, great,
Gareth, I don't think you have anything, do you?
Nothing on my end.
Thank you.
great. And I don't have any matters that I've not reasonably anticipated, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Jim, did
Second.
I hear you second? Great. Chris, could you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Hector,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Lillian,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Great. Thank you all.